And welcome back to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. I feel like today's a little bit like Groundhog's Day. Like I was going through some of the trending topics, the news, looking stuff up. It felt a little redundant, which I'm sure we're all kind of getting into that flow with just kind of COVID and Afghanistan and everything else. So we thought today we'd wing it a little bit. If you have comments, if you have questions, if you have something you've noticed, we're going to go through the trending topics and kind of touch on some stuff we wanted to talk about. But before we get to any of that, the most important question, certainly of today, Mark, how are you feeling?
See, you just asked this, you don't even really care, but today I have lots of answers.
No, I do. Well, time out before you do that. I care. I'm not 100+ episodes into this and faking it.
Okay. So anyway, this is how my day's gone so far. I had to get a TB shot.
Yep.
And they go back and read it. I did not cry and I did not faint.
It's a good start.
Which is, now I did go out to the parking lot. This is a true story because TB is one where they give you a little shot. You got to go back in 48 hours. They have to read it and make sure it dissolved and didn't.
Okay.
So the nurse says to me, like, I'm not going to put a Band-Aid on it because sometimes a Band-Aid can irritate it. Mm-hmm. So I walk out to my car and I look and there's a little like dried blood on my arm. So I'm like, oh, great. So I go back in. I was like, I don't mean to be that guy, but is this normal?
Right.
And she's like, yeah, I said I can put a Band-Aid on it if you. I was like, no, I'm okay. I just wanted to make sure. So when it comes to needles and blood, I am not the most masculine of people you've ever met.
I'm good. I just can't look at it. Do you look at it or do you just try to look away?
They won't let me try to donate blood anymore. Okay. When I go in for the annual little so they can check your cholesterol and check your blood sugar and things like that.
Okay.
I just scroll through my phone and I try to look then I'm okay.
Okay.
But for a long time, I don't know when I started doing it annually, maybe at like 40.
Okay.
Because my family has a history of there's diabetes in my family, there's high cholesterol in my family. So whenever it started, I had to sit in the special chair for a while. I have progressed to the big boy chair.
Okay.
But, because they ask, is there a chance you're going to faint? I was like, oh, there's a chance. Yes, there is.
Okay.
So can you lay out like pillows on the floor? But there is the chair for the, us special people who have issues. But not anymore. Not me. Now I'm big boy chair.
Okay.
But so that's how my day started. Now my day will finish. Where are we here? Dallas Cowboys. We start our trip to the Super Bowl tonight against the Buccaneers. And so here's my next couple. I've got the Cowboys and the Bucks tonight. And then I'm broadcasting in Toursville and Jersey Shore tomorrow night. So my next 2 evenings of football, I'm ready. I am stoked.
Can we, and I don't want to talk about this for very long, but there is something about like the preseason optimism of just being 0-0 is almost better than being like 5-1. Like there's just something about.
I'll take 5-1.
So, it sounds like you guys haven't had a good 2 decades.
Whatever.
But you get what I'm saying. Like there is something about the idea of like, it's almost like when you plan a trip, the idea of the trip is almost better than the trip sometimes.
Oh, a lot of times.
That's kind of like in sports, like the preseason being 0-0 and the opportunity and the growth of the team and stuff. Sometimes that's even better than being like 4-2, 5-1.
I don't disagree with that.
There's a lot of people right now. This is the happiest that they will be during the NFL season.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a buddy who's a big Notre Dame fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always like, every May, according to you, Notre Dame's the best team in the country.
That's right.
It gets to October, and they're never the best team in the country. But
he's never wrong in May.
He's not.
How do you prove him wrong in May?
He's not. But, it's funny you mention that. I did read this, and this is not where the topic was supposed to go, but they do these studies of people that go on, like you and your girlfriend go on some tropical vacation, and they interview the people after they get back.
Yeah.
How fun was your vacation? And they interview the people while they're there.
Okay.
And almost unilaterally, that was the word I was looking for.
That's good.
That people reminisce back that it was happier than when they were there. Because when you're there, you're laying on the beach, you're laying by the pool. It's good, but like laying by, it's might be relaxing, it might be, but it's not a thrill a minute. It's just,
Sure.
it's there. And there was a lot of the travel was hassle, and you're all, so it's funny how our minds, and they, even to relationships, and we probably talked about this, when people look back at relationships, they very rarely look, people who are heartbroken look back at all the happy moments and forget about the bad moments. And people that often go through breakups and divorce and stuff just remember the misery and don't remember the good times.
The best advice, because you hit on a key point there about vacations, the best advice I've ever gotten about vacations, and I don't think I've ever told you this, is that when you go to leave for your vacation, remember that you can get away from your problems, but it does not fix them. And that is like the best advice I've ever gotten on vacation, because there's so many people that go on vacation, and then once they're on vacation, all they can think about is like, oh, all my problems aren't solved. And it's like the vacation wasn't going to solve your problems. Like, it's just to get you away from them for a while, and then you're ready to go back and solve them, or get back to the real world, or get back to your job, or whatever it is. That has stuck with me my entire life. Like, vacation is not going to solve your problems, but take advantage of the fact that you are away from them.
I remember I used to rent a room from this lady when I was teaching in Baltimore. And she was a friend of the family and stuff like that. But she was this whole thing of getting away. Mm-hmm. And I understand, to me, there's a difference between vacation and travel.
Sure.
And if you want to travel and you want to see this thing or see this part of the world or whatever, I get that. But the whole aspect of, I just need to get away from my life, and you're constantly planning on the next time to get away from your life, then your life must kind of suck. Because if you can't be happy at home, that all you're trying to do is get away, then that's a tough way to live.
I think it ebbs and flows. I think I would guess for everybody, there are points in your life where you can't wait to get away. And there are points in your life where things are going pretty well. And it's just kind of that ebb and flow of where you are in your life.
And don't get me wrong, I get the beach trip. I get Disneyland, like that's more fun than home. I get it. But if you have a quiet weekend at home with nothing to do, and you're just going to and that is painful to you, then yikes.
No, I get what you're saying. You brought up Disneyland. I would like to start a petition that Disney is not an actual vacation. Like if you have kids and listen, it's cool. Like, I'm not saying it's not neat, but what I'm saying is, like, this idea, like, I guess it depends what you deem as a vacation. If the idea of a vacation is that you are going to return back refreshed, like your mind is going to be at ease, then I just don't think Disney is a vacation. I
agree with you. I would say this. So here are my quick Disney stories. I've actually been to Disneyland in California and Disney World in Florida. Yes. And now I was at Disneyland 20 years ago. But we lucked out. Disney World is much better. They built Disneyland first, and then they built Disney World after, and they bought up all this empty land in Florida. But Disney World is much better than Disneyland, for whatever that's worth. It is. You just feel so stressed that you have to do this and you have to do this and you have to get your money's worth because this is paid for and there is no relaxation. One of my happiest moments, I can remember when we went, my ex and I went with our young kids, and the kids were having fun at the pool. And we were there in November, so there's no pools back home. So we're there at the pool, and you're almost like, God, should we be on the ride? Should we be at this? We haven't been to this part of the park yet. We haven't done that. And we're like, but the kids are having fun.
Yeah.
And I remember laying in bed watching Twister, which is just so much fun of a movie. But it was like, I was exhausted, but I was laying in bed and like, okay, I'm really having fun now because the movie's fun. I'm tired. I'm just laying here. I can go to sleep whenever. Yeah. But you are on such a...
Oh, yeah.
And I know there's people who love to travel like that. They have an itinerary and they're going to go, 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 go. That's not me.
Not for me. It depends. I'm selfishly, if I can have vacations, like I'm a big zoo guy. I love museums. I love like those types of things. So if I have those things to go and do, I can be like the up and at 'em, like, let's go, let's get to this place. But for the most part, like I am a wake up late, go lay on the beach, find a good dinner. Like, I don't need an itinerary. I don't need the bike ride with the, like, I just don't need that.
So, no, I'm with you. With you.
COVID continues to dominate the news cycle moving into the fall. We thought it would be interesting to talk. You and I were going back and forth about, we can talk a lot about the science behind it, the health behind it, the political side of it, those types of things. But one of the things that you and I started to go back and forth is, what does it mean for kids? What does it mean for local communities? I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. And the best way I could come up with is like, we thought by now we would be kind of cleared of it, out of it. So what does that look like, or what does that mean as it becomes more and more relevant that it's not going away? It's not going to end peacefully. Like, and I say that in the terms of like, there's going to be civil disputes. There's going to be conversation, negative conversation between sides. I'm just wondering, and you brought up a key point, what does it mean for kids now? What does it mean for communities moving forward? And you and I thought that that would be something neat to kind of like talk about from that perspective. Not so much the science side of it, the political side of it, but as a community that's going to be living with this. We had the UPMC doctor come on, and I'm blanking on his name now, but he actually came on the show when you were away.
Dr. Spock?
It was not Dr. Somebody, I would argue somebody maybe smarter than Dr. Spock. He was fantastic.
Is there anyone smarter than Dr. Spock?
I just named one. I just can't think of his name.
The half human, half Vulcan Spock? Is that who we're talking about?
I don't know any of that. You might as well be speaking in German. I don't know anything about that. We brought on the UPMC doctor, and he basically said he believes that 4 to 5 years we'll be doing boosters. And he said maybe by the 6th or 7th year, we're on the other end of it. And so if that is the relevancy, if that's what how we're going to start talking about this, what does that mean? What does that look like? You obviously have kids. You have somebody you just dropped off at college. You've got kids in high school. What's your perspective on that?
It's going to be interesting to see, I think, from a reporting standpoint, because this is an illness with no prescription. There's no it's when I had it, and I had it last February, zinc, vitamin B and D, C and D.
Okay.
There were 2 vitamins and zinc, and I probably still have half the jar. But it's not like, oh, you have COVID, go to your local pharmacy, pick up this, what are they called?
Prescription?
Yeah, but they give you a
drug.
Yeah, there's something. My mom always so anyway, and then you take it for 10 days and it's over.
Okay.
They don't antibiotic. That's the word I'm looking for. I couldn't have gone any further until I came up with that.
Okay.
So you go home and you ride it out.
Yeah.
So I think you are going to see kids who are part of clubs, part of teams, part of organizations, who are like, I'm not shutting down the band. I'm not shutting down the football team, the soccer team, the wrestling team, the basketball team, or all that stuff. That they're like, I'm afraid I have it. I'm going to go home and be sick. I'm never going to get tested. And I think that's the strategy, what it's going to be going forward.
It's a neat perspective. I was thinking about this the other day because, remember, before COVID, which I know that feels like forever ago, before COVID, I remember what a debate cell phone usage in kids was. You and I used to talk about it when we first started having conversations about how often Jimmy's on his phone and different things like that. And that was a debate in the sense of there was still a lot of positive things to it. Like the idea of having all this information at your fingertips and how to manage that and all that. So while there was this negative side, there was an overwhelming positive side to it, like the communication side of it, things like that. This is so different in the sense of you and I don't know what it was like to have a cell phone in high school, but this is different in the sense of you and I don't know what it was like to deal with this, but there's no positive aspect to it. And so one of the things that I've really dove into, especially after a couple of conversations we've had, is the mental health of children and where that's heading. And I'm fascinated by that because how do you spin this as a positive? There are millions of kids that every day, like this is on the forefront of their mind, whether it's because of the news or their parents or the school district, it's everywhere they turn around. And you and I never had anything like that.
No.
Never. Like there were blurbs and there were things that happened, but not for 18, 24 months at a time, with the idea that it could still be there 24 months later again. So I do wonder, like from a health perspective, or from even just like a mental perspective, how I would have handled that, or how I would have viewed that if I was like 13, 14, 15 years old. This idea of like, is this going to be here when I graduate high school? Like, are we still going to be doing this when I go to graduate? And that part of it, I don't even know how I would have handled it.
Well, I think, part of it is you get some of these kids and now it's become so normalized that they're like, this is what it is. Like I told people about my daughter, who is now a sophomore at Pitt. Her freshman year at Pitt was, you had the option whether you wanted to go. You could go and live in a dorm by yourself.
Right.
Things were very isolated and segregated, so they didn't intermix. And lots of her classes would have been virtual. There were some classes you could go sit in a classroom and the teacher was virtual.
Right.
So it was or a professor, I guess it would be.
Sure.
But it was so she decided to stay home and do her whole freshman year virtually. So as I've talked to people about this, and people like you and I would be like, God, that would suck. It's like she didn't know any different yet because she
Sure.
was only a freshman. The people who it sucked for were the juniors who had 2 years of real college away from home and then had to come home and sit with mom and dad and do it online.
Yeah.
So a lot of it has just been what's your perspective. And for
They
some
don't
of these,
know any differently.
for some of these kids in high school now, like my son going to high school, he's a freshman. He doesn't know high school without a mask.
Yeah.
So he's just hey, this is like, it's the new normal.
I've noticed, like, one of the other parts of it, like just from coaching and like being around kids, I've noticed there's almost like a gratefulness now to doing things that wasn't there before. And so
Yes.
what I mean by that is, like, before, if we had an open gym or we were doing something or something was scheduled or stuff like that, there were years, like there were months and spans and times where like it was like pulling teeth to get kids to do stuff. It was, you'd have to get on the phone and like, hey, we've got this tournament. Do you want to come? Or, hey, we're having an open gym. We have 9. Will you be our 10th? Like those kinds of things. What I've noticed since this is that there is this newfound gratefulness for, like, they're so excited to do stuff and they're so excited to be a part of things. So I do, like, if you're trying to put like a positive spin on it, there is this newfound like
Appreciation.
Yeah. Like they're so excited to be doing something. And I don't, again, is this how I wanted to get to that point? Obviously not. But if you're trying to find like positive aspects for kids and like what's coming out of it, they are excited to do stuff. And I know that's very simple.
Well, I remember last year, and a friend, the kids were seniors in high school, and everyone hates preseason football practice. Sure. Everyone hates, the kids certainly do. It sucks.
Sure.
And they talked about how much they were excited to be there. And even the kids said, I never thought I'd be so excited to go through like 2-day football practices because it's, just thinking that it was taken away. Right. And kids wanting to go to school. Like, now, don't get me wrong. There's lots of kids when they shut school down 2 springs ago, were like, this is awesome. But there's lots of kids who were like, I'd rather be in school than to sit home all day. So, that has come out of it. I think there's been a lot of family time that has come out of it too. I know with my kids, we got to spend a lot more time together because of COVID, because there were less options.
Yeah. Have you noticed anything else, like, because I don't have like a family, like I don't have kids, I don't have a wife. Have you noticed anything else? Because you told me you guys kind of got in this rhythm, like you were watching movies and you were doing things.
Yeah, because it's not just because we were stuck home, but there were no sports on. The kids were in no activities. So not only were kids not in school, like during the school year, like my daughter, it's Thursday. The last 2 days she's texted me, hey, I won't be home right after school. Because one day, and then she had to go to work, and then yesterday, I don't even know where she was. She's a senior, and she's like, hey, I won't be home right. But they go, my son has football practice, and my daughter's in color guard practice. And when kids are in activities, like the weeknights are a lot of gobbled up. They have school, they have activity, they have homework, and then whatever free time they have, they don't want to spend it with mom and dad.
Right.
So you kind of get into these, weekend moments where it's like, hey, do you want to watch a movie tonight? What are you doing tonight? But then they have their own plans, and it's so COVID took all that away. So there was a lot of family time, downtime, and people just weren't congregating. People were just sitting at home.
Some breaking news that's coming out from Bloomberg. The World Health Organization chief urges a halt to COVID booster shots. The head of the World Health Organization called for an extension on offering booster shots through the year's end, concerned about people who haven't received their first vaccinations. So obviously that will be coming down the pipeline. We were told a couple of weeks ago about the booster shots and the US's initiative to try to get those out. But obviously the World Health Organization and other people are saying slow down.
I wonder, there have not been, I wonder what the statistics on kids getting vaccinated. I think I saw a stat that 73% of Pennsylvanians that are eligible have had at least one shot. I don't know if that's true or not, but I saw something like that on the news. I wonder what the percentage is when you go walk through like a high school, because is the age 11, 12, 10?
For high school?
No,
for the shot.
For the shot.
I don't know the exact age.
It's somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay.
Like elementary kids, I don't think can get it. But like middle school kids, the age is somewhere in there. But high school kids are all old enough. I wonder, to go through a typical high school in our region, what percentage of kids are vaccinated? And is it going to take a kid in your school to get really sick and to be hospitalized,
right,
to have a kickstart of, or a jump in vaccinations for people who are like, because at the beginning, COVID didn't affect kids and it avoided kids. And now with this variant, we're seeing that the kids' numbers are going way up. Kids' deaths are going up, hospitalizations. So I think that's kind of the next thing going forward.
I think, again, we're not doctors. One of the things that I've noticed reading, and even just like within communities, the symptoms are just so much stronger right now within kids than what they were before. I have not read anything that hospitalizations are up for kids, but the positive cases for kids are up. And you and I have talked about it. I think part of it probably is a stronger variant, but there has to be a side of this where I think, and I said this to you, not a doctor, this is thinking out loud, I would have to believe that the majority of kids who ended up with COVID last year did not demonstrate symptoms that made them feel like they needed to go get tested. And now with a stronger variant, the symptoms are stronger, they're showing up. I think more kids now are probably getting tested. They probably feel the symptoms. They're probably going to get it done. So I don't know what that means. Like from a statistical standpoint, like I don't know how to gauge that or what that means. And to be honest with you, I don't even know how hospitals or somebody else would be able to, like, how would you ever get a clean set of data from last year for kids? I don't even know how you would pull that off.
What do you mean?
Well, what I mean by that is if how many kids actually ended up getting tested for COVID last year versus the number of kids that are probably getting tested for COVID this year?
Well, that aspect, no, but hospitalizations is
a transparent enough stat that they could be able to give that. They could say this many kids were hospitalized last year versus this many kids this year. Right now, I haven't seen anything.
I think it's way up. I think kids being hospitalized. I think it's way up.
Because I have not seen anything yet. Like, I have not seen an actual report about kids' hospitalizations. I've seen reports about hospitalizations being up, but not actual kids themselves.
Well, I just saw one last night on the news that, like, even places that you wouldn't think of. I think here we keep thinking of urban centers where people are all over each other. Idaho is really bad right now. And they're talking about hospitals that are having to they have more intensive care patients than they have beds. And they're having to decide who gets treatment and who doesn't. Yeah. And the next question is going to raise, are hospitals, if they have to make an arbitrary decision, they have to base it on something. Are they allowed to base it on a coin flip? Are they allowed to base it on age? Are they allowed to base it on who's been vaccinated and who hasn't? And that's going to be a question that comes up if hospitalizations keep getting overrun.
See, I I agree with you, but I think the answer is going to be simpler than that. I think it's going to be first come, first serve. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. But my initial gut reaction, if you're a hospital and you're being over flooded, whatever terminology you want to use, a first come, first serve basis. Like, I don't know how you're going to take people off and put them in a different place or take people out of bed. I think most.
So you don't think coin flip?
I don't think coin flip. I think
because coin flip solves a lot of problems.
Does it?
Absolutely, it does.
I don't. It may solve them. I don't know if it fixes them. It may help them decide, but that part of it's interesting. I think the other thing that you're going to start to see, and we're already seeing it. I showed you what the WellSpan Health was doing down near, I believe it's down near York, PA. Mm-hmm. And then Evangelical just did it as well. They're putting out transparent hospitalization stats. So what they're doing is these infographics where it's actually showing how many people are in the hospital. It's showing you out of those people that are hospitalized, how many are vaccinated, how many are unvaccinated. And then it's showing you the same thing for ICU beds. And then it's showing you the same thing for ventilators. I don't think that answers all the questions, but I think what we're getting to the point to is it's so hard to find data that is A, transparent, B, easy to explain, and C, like no one's going to try to misconstrue it. And I think what hospitals have figured out is that is a very transparent way to say, here's what we have and this is what we're seeing, that most citizens and most communities can understand. So I've been fascinated to see how hospitals are trying to push out a message that is transparent through infographics and stats. And it's gotten better and better. I mean, we're 18, 20 months into this, so it should be better by now. But it's been interesting to see some of those come out.
Well, I guess, too, it depends for the non-vaxxed, and I am vaxxed. But for the non-vaxxed, it depends why. And I think there's this segment who thinks it happened too quick, and they don't trust it. And I think there's the faction that believes we don't know the long-term effects of it. So the people that think it happened too quick, you explained it to me, the brief history of how these vaccines are made and how they weren't starting from square one. They had all this information. They just had to adjust it to this, whatever. But if you truly believe that, like, if you believe that 10 years from now, you know, people are going to start dropping dead, there's going to be brutal side effects, and history has shown that there have been drugs administered who've had long-term, who have had effects that showed up down the road. If you believe that, even when people present you the data, because the data now shows that vaccines, even though you can still get it and transmit it, your symptoms are way less severe, and they think you're contagious for less. And the hospital stats show that. But if you're afraid that 10 years from now there's going to be some bad side effect, then you might not even be arguing the stats and say, I know it would help me now. I'm just afraid of what comes down the road. So that is, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think that all the anti-vaxxers are looking at the stats and saying, I don't believe them. I think that some of them are looking at the stats saying, oh, I get that. Right. I'm just afraid there's no long-term testing on this. And there's some validity to that.
The one part, like the one side, it's because I'm vaccinated, but I am like, I tend to fall more towards the freedom of choice because I know like Jimmy Kimmel came out last. I don't know if you saw the Jimmy Kimmel comment.
I watched it, yeah.
There are more and more people kind of pointing the finger to the other side and I'm more and more surprised by it. I thought there would be a few people that would be vocal who are vaccinated and point fingers at the other side. But this is the part of it, and I've had a few people say this to me, and I never really have a great answer to come back with.
I'll help you. I'll have a great answer to give you.
But they've always said, like, they like to say, like, I'm betting on myself and the consequences are my own. And I've had very intelligent people say that to me. And so when they say that and they're saying, like, I'm betting on myself, I'm betting on my health, like, I have somebody who is in the best shape of anybody I know that is unvaccinated. And they've said, like, my vaccination is like, I do my cardio, I have great heart health. They like, my diet is great, everything else. And they're like, I'm betting on myself that if I do get sick, like, this is my way of. And like when you look at the statistics of who has passed away and everything else, it's not an insane thought. Like it's not a crazy thought to think if I'm as healthy as I can possibly. Now, there are people who have underlying health conditions. Like I have mitral valve prolapse. So I have been told that like I'm not immunocompromised, but if I get it, they are unsure what that means for me. Like they don't know necessarily how that would hurt me if I were to end up like on a respirator or something like that.
Right.
So for me, it might not be as simple as just saying like, I'm going to be as healthy as I can be. But for him, it's not an awful argument. Like it's not a horrible argument.
But that's the societal argument is that's for him looking at him as an individual. And it's what does he transmit to people who aren't in as good of health and the older and the more susceptible. And that's why if the argument is if he gets vaccinated and if he's less contagious and his symptoms are less severe and his chances of transferring it are less and thus better for everybody else. That's where the argument comes from the other side.
And I totally understand that. The only part of that so far I haven't been able to wrap my head around is when you say they're less likely to pass it on. The only thing that makes it less likely to pass it on is that their symptoms would be weaker, but they're just as likely to hold the virus and pass it on as
I read somewhere that their contagious period is less
because the symptoms are less.
Okay.
So you see,
so they go hand in hand. Okay.
So it's an interesting conversation. The funny part is like I think you and I agree in the sense that there are very many people who could be right or wrong on this, but the idea of trying to balance it out, like I've said to you, finding the correct information on this stuff has almost become borderline impossible. Like it has become almost impossible to just say, I am on this side and everything that I am seeing on it is correct, because there are so many different doctors and scholarly articles and just organizations coming out and saying, this is what we have found. This is what we have found. And they don't all match. Like they just don't all link up. And I just find it hard to believe that there's one side or one scholarly article that has it all right. Well, I just can't wrap my head around that.
I think too that one of the reasons that I'm vaxxed is to just like, I don't know if I'm a non-conspiracy theorist and I know the entire US military is vaccinated. Like they don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. They are vaccinated. So why would, for the people, there are people who've put the political spin on it that were even like, this was a dream of the Democratic Party to get Trump out of office, that everything as an underlying political conspiracy to it. And they miss the fact that not everybody loves politics and that the scientists love science. Sure. Like these other people love to, love Trump or hate Trump or whatever the case may be. So the scientists don't care about agendas. They're there for the science. And that there's this faction of people that everything they see in life, that nothing is honest, nothing is forthcoming, and that everyone has an agenda and we're being lied to about everything we hear. And that would be a tough way to live too.
I think this is because you and I touched on this very briefly one time. There is a part of this that we've gotten to the point where what you said about scientists and doctors, for the overwhelming part, is true, right? 99% of doctors and scientists believe in the science and they believe in the medical science and what they find, right? It's trial and error, it's testing, it's everything that gets down to the basis of this is factual or it's not factual. What's changed is doctors and scientists' ability to speak freely on what they have found. And so
that's a good point.
So like what I've said to you is, if you go online and you can find scholarly articles from Hopkins and from the World Health Organization and from the CDC, like you can find tons of information from really smart doctors that are trying to give you factual information. The fear for those doctors now, though, is the ridicule that comes from finding something that you believe the other side may deem as something they don't want to believe. Right. And so you have these intelligently gifted people going through this data and sorting this stuff out and trying to get to the truth of it. But some of them are terrified to say what they have found, because they don't want half of America to say like, well, you're wrong, and you're like, because for a doctor, for most of the career of a doctor, you are seen as a savior. You're seen as somebody who has the answers, and for a lot of doctors and scientists, I would imagine the last 2.5 years, 2 years, it's the first time where you're not viewed as, it's not just assumed you have the answers. Half of America, regardless of what side you're on, is probably going to go against the data or what you believe to be true.
Well,
and that has to be hard.
Yes. And we've got like normal schmoes of very average intelligence who are now saying that they don't believe anything that comes out of the World Health Organization. And you're just like, what? Like the World Health Organization has an agenda outside of the science. And it is people, the people that love politics and that love conspiracies have lost the point. It's almost like us talking to people who don't like sports.
Sure.
And there's times that we're like, oh my gosh, I forgot those people existed. There's people that don't like sports.
Sure.
There's people that don't watch the Super Bowl. There's people who could care less that the NFL season starts today.
Sure.
Because in our circle, like, we don't have that. And there are people who just don't get the fact that there are people who just live for the science that could care less about the politics.
Sure.
And that they just don't. There are people that you can't tell them, you can't convince them that everybody doesn't have an angle, that everything's not a conspiracy, and that it's all double talk. And that's what's insane to me, that that people believe the World Health Organization is lying about health because they have an agenda above being the World Health Organization.
There is a flooding of the freedom of information is something that nobody had predicted. Like going into the 90s and the 2000s and stuff, everybody thought like oil was the highest commodity or water was the highest commodity or all this stuff. And what they're beginning to
Water's
realize,
still pretty high.
It's still pretty high. But what they're beginning to realize, like, the greatest commodity might have been the freedom of information and who was able to figure out how to necessarily control it or use it first. So there is this idea, like, it's much easier to have people take a vaccine, to have people fall in line, to do these things that you need them to do for better and for worse. It's much harder, or it's much easier to have them do those things when they lack the freedom of information. And notice, I'm not saying correct information.
Right.
Like, some of the information that I find is fantastic. There are other things that I read, and like a month later, I like read something else and I'm like, oh, that was completely, like, that makes no sense what I had read a month before. Like, it doesn't line up. It doesn't make sense anymore. So how do you, I've never, through this whole thing, I guess what I'm saying, for 20 months now, I've never thought of putting the blame on the individual, because I think where society is and where our culture is, the individual almost doesn't stand a chance. You're so flooded with information and trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong. And there's just how the idea that the individual could be held responsible for that, I don't know if they can be. Well, I think that's why freedom of choice has become so important in the matter.
I think what's happened in our world for this generation, and it'll be the only generation that's like this, from where we grew up, if we saw it on the news, we believed it. Because there weren't cable news that was greatly slanted to try to make a buck.
Sure.
And that's why these news organizations are slanted. I saw an interview with someone about Rupert Murdoch and Fox, and they said, does Rupert Murdoch really believe in the conservative view, or did he see it as the best business model? And the person said, if Fox could go liberal and make more money, they would go liberal tomorrow. That it is a business, and that's what they're trying to do. And the same thing with what we read online. If it looks like a newspaper article and it acts like a newspaper article, we believe it. And that's why so many people share these memes and share these posts and articles that I've got to the point where I'm like, I don't believe that. And now I fact check it. And with Google, in about 20 seconds, you can usually fact check. But there are so many people who still see it. And if it looks right, and it looks like it's supposed to look, it must be true. And if it supports their argument, they're like, oh, did you see that? Like there was one a couple weeks ago that the CEO of Pfizer is anti-vaxxed, and he said, I don't need one. And I was like, the CEO of Pfizer that can't be true. And I did a Google search, and he's like, no, and he was showing his card and showing the dates, and he's like,
Sure.
but somebody, some egghead in their basement just made this up, and people run with it. And I had a guy tell me that he thought about as a business to create a fake news website and just sit there and type fake stuff.
Right.
And as long as people clicked on it, he was going to make money.
Right.
And people just can't fathom that. But this is out there.
There's a whole I always sound very narcissistic when I say this. There's generations above me that they're blown away that somebody could just start a blog.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea that someone has the ability to just start like
and not someone, everyone.
Yeah, everyone and anyone. Yes. So I think that's always going to be the hard part. There is, just to kind of like shift gears on us a little bit. You brought up memes that have been proved untrue. There was one going around, and you may have seen it, where Tiger Woods putts the ball, and before it gets to the hole, he turns around and is shaking hands with his opponent.
Oh, they edited it.
And it just came out like a day or two ago. It was like proven that like this actually never happened. And they actually showed how they took the person putting it and they
Your putts don't take that long.
No,
and your opponent doesn't stand that close to you.
No,
He's
not
on the other side of the green.
Correct. So they actually showed like how they did it and everything else. But like if you ask, I mean, that thing got shared hundreds.
Oh.
Like it was unbelievable. I mean, if you were a sports fan, you've seen.
Did you see the one of Brady throwing it into the jugs gun?
Oh yeah.
And people, because that one, people are like, wait, is that real?
Yeah.
Is that real? And we're trying to pick it apart. It looks real to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is or not, but yeah.
So I don't know how to see this. This is the part that's neat. When I first saw memes, I immediately assumed that they were fake. Like never see.
My generation doesn't.
That's exactly my point. When I saw a meme, it was a joke. Like a meme was to be funny. It was never to be serious. And then all of a sudden, like in the last 3-4 years, it almost became like you said, people took it seriously, but also too, like, it was no longer a joke. Like, even if it looked real, you knew it was a joke because it was a meme. And somehow memes have become this form of information that people take very, very seriously.
To my generation, they came down off the mountain on a stone tablet. Like that is, if you read it and it's like, and they have a quote that somebody said it, the CEO of Pfizer, they're like, oh my God, can you believe this?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've talked to people who shared this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you realize what you shared is totally untrue. I looked it up and it's totally. And the person said to me, yeah, it seemed kind of crazy to me, but what if it was true?
Right.
And I'm like, you shared it as to what if it, like there were Martians that just landed on East 3rd Street. But what if it was true?
Right.
Well, but it's not true. So that's part of the society. So that's the blame that I do put on the individual. The individual has to be a little smarter and get the era that we're in, that just because you read it and it looks like a real art, that it's not. I mean, we've got to the point where we can tell if it's an ad or if it's an article. Because, when you do a Google search and you're like, oh, it's an ad, oh, it's an ad, oh, it's an ad. Where's my real information?
Yeah.
We have to be a little smarter. And especially my generation is slow on the uptake.
What makes a meme so deadly, and you could see this actually like on Instagram and on Facebook during like the last 2 elections. What makes a meme so deadly is it's so easy to share. And I've talked to you about this, how much easier it is and how much more willing people are to share a meme or a photo than they are to share a story or an article, something where somebody has to click and go into it. And so a lot of these things you'll see an article about a similar topic and it'll have like 100 shares, but an incorrect meme about the same topic will have
15,000
of thousands of shares, and it just spreads like wildfire. So it is.
But it's in defense of the people, the memes are like good rumors. And spreading rumors is fun. If you heard, hey, did you hear so-and-so is going out? Did you hear so-and-so is getting divorced? Did you hear this? Those are fun, whether you know them or not. Hey, I heard, hey, this is what I'm no more guilty of spreading it than the person who told me. And you tell your buddy, you're like, hey, did you hear anything about this? This is what I heard. Did you know anything about? And it's not malicious. It's not sensational. It's just kind of, you want to be in the know.
But the fun should be the haha, and then the fun should be finding out if it's true or not. Because
after you tell buddy, hey, did they split up? Yeah. Now you need to find out if it's true. So now you start texting other people. Hey, did you hear anything about so and so?
Well, that's not how to do it either.
That's how you do it.
No. So because you and I sat in here, and I told you a comment that a political figure had said. And you said, and you and I both laughed, and you said that can't be true.
Oh, the one that was given to Trump Jr.?
Yes. And then you and I looked, like, for 2 minutes, we started looking it up, like, what'd you find? What did I find? Oh, this says this, that says that. So look,
we found that it wasn't true.
It wasn't true.
That's what we found.
So to me, the fun of it is the laugh, the initial laugh, but then the investigation, like the Hardy Boys, like diving into it and trying to find out, like, is this accurate? Is this not accurate? This is another side part of memes that I have learned. I have learned that most memes, there is a factual truth to the meme. It's usually the 10% or the 15 or 20% twist at the end of it that has been changed to favor or to persuade or to shift somebody's thinking. So if you actually like dive in on these memes and you try to look them up, you learn a ton. Like you actually learn a lot of stuff. And then you have the aha moment of, oh, that's what actually happened. Or, oh, that's who actually said it. Or, oh, that's where it actually came from.
Yes. But I think what is one of the realities of our society right now is there are still, I say, sensible people that are close enough to the middle that they're sensible. That when we read something, like we both read a quote that was attributed to Trump Jr., and we both immediately said, there's no way that's true.
It can't be
and
true.
We laughed and we dug into it and found out it wasn't true. But I think there are people on both sides that if they find something sensational about Trump or Trump Jr., or they find something about Biden or Kamala, that they would rather share it and just to get the reaction from it than they would be to find out it's not true and not share it.
But I think you bring up a very good question, because if you and I laughed, or if you and I said, or if you and I had a moment of, like, enjoyment isn't the word, but if you and I had a dopamine hit, you know what I'm saying? Like if our brains triggered, wasn't the meme successful? And if I share that meme, to me, it was a funny meme. Like there are people.
Yeah, but there
are memes and there are people who probably share some of this stuff because they think they're in on the joke. And what they don't realize is every share or every click, there's a percentage of people who aren't in on the joke. I
see what you're saying, but I think there's a responsibility. It's just like, again, like an insatiable rumor that, did you hear so-and-so and so-and-so are having an affair? Well, that's like, it's a fun rumor for me to hear. So it's going to be a fun rumor for me to tell. But the more people that hear this rumor, you can be very damaging to people's lives if it's totally just made up.
Sure.
And we are being very damaging to our society by just spreading false memes.
But see, that's the difference. That's the difference between generations. Like that's the difference between you and I, because to me, a meme is never serious.
And that's fair.
And so
that's a fair point.
Yes. And so even what you just
described. Then can you put a disclaimer for old people like me that, like, this is a joke and you're supposed to laugh? Because a lot of my generation doesn't get the joke.
And sadly, a lot of the memes aren't that funny. That's the other problem that
our generation would write back if it's a joke and we're supposed to laugh. Jokes are supposed to have humor. That's a good.
So that's another one. Real quick because that was good. Did you see the
no one listened.
Lots of people listened. Did you see the new Matrix trailer?
No.
Are you a Matrix fan?
I saw. I'm gonna say at least the first one. How many are there?
2, 3. I'm not.
I saw at least the first one, and I will be. In full disclosure, I didn't get it.
Okay.
I have purchased it. At least one. I probably have 1 and 2, and I was like, I am going to watch this, and I'm going to figure out what I missed, and I've yet to do it.
The trailer makes it look like it's going to be the spectacle of it. Now, who knows how good the movie will be? But the trailer. So
is
check
it
out
what's
the
his
trailer.
name again?
Oh yeah, Keanu Reeves is that. They bring back everybody.
Well, if you're him, why wouldn't you? How much? They can't do the mate. They got to pay him $50 million.
They bring back everybody, and they added Jonathan Groff, who, if you know Jonathan Groff,
I know the name.
He was in Hamilton. He was in
Which
Mindhunter. He's King George.
Okay, yes.
Yes. So he's fantastic in it. Another trailer that just dropped, there is a Leonardo DiCaprio.
So he was the one white guy in Hamilton.
Well, yes. I mean, I think there were 3 in Hamilton.
Oh, were there?
I think there were 3
the only one I
people in
remember.
Hamilton that were right. But yeah, he was King George in Hamilton.
Okay.
And then there is another trailer that was just released by Netflix.
Okay.
It is an Adam McKay movie. So he did like The Big Short, he did Step Brothers, pretty well-known director. Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence. It looks like there's a Will Ferrell cameo in the trailer. His name is not listed, but there's a scene with a jet, and the guy inside the jet is a carbon copy of Will Ferrell if it's not him. It's called Don't Look Up, and it's a kind of like political satire comedy about an asteroid heading towards Earth. Jonah Hill plays the president. It looks really good. I think
good. Jennifer Lawrence should do some nudity, don't you think?
Why not Jonah Hill? What do you have against Jonah Hill doing?
I mean, I don't have anything against it. It's not really. Okay. It wouldn't really be high on my list.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I think it would help round out her career.
Do you?
Yeah.
Jonah. I don't know if Jonah Hill. He didn't do it in Superbad. I'm trying. It might round out Jonah Hill's career as well. Howard Stern, Jimmy Kimmel, a couple of people coming out speaking high. We don't have to dive into it. I'm just going through the trending topics right now. But Howard Stern kind of put his foot in the ground as well about the unvaccinated and vaccinated issue. It's going to be, as we get closer and closer to winter, the public discourse from celebrities and people of higher it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
No, I agree.
Because that's something, the idea of Howard Stern and Jimmy Kimmel doing that 16 months ago was not.
Well, no, it was a different world 16 months ago. I do want to mention this.
Yeah.
On a kind of a sad topic.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since the Yankees won like 13 in a row and were the best team in the world, now they can't beat anyone.
Okay.
And they have a huge game. Under cover of NFL darkness,
okay,
the Yankees and the Blue Jays. The Yankees have fallen behind Boston for this first wild card. The way baseball works now, there's 3 division winners and 2 wild card teams. So the 2 best non-division winners play a 1 game. It's not a best of 5. It's not a best of 7. It's one and done. Winner moves on. Loser goes home. And it has been the Yankees and the Red Sox for weeks. Right. Yankees were higher, so they would have been the home game. Last night it flipped. The Yankees are now behind Boston, and the Blue Jays are only a game and a half back. So just 2 weeks ago they couldn't lose. And now they are dangerously close to falling out of the playoff hunt. And it would be one of the great collapses in Major League Baseball history if the Yankees don't make the playoffs.
They are 2-8 in their last 10.
They are awful right now. They just lost 2 out of 3 at home to the Orioles. They've lost 3 in a row to the Jays. They go again tonight. It would be one of the great collapses in baseball history.
And they made some moves at the deadline to try to push for it.
Oh yeah,
they weren't quiet at the deadline.
Yeah, they got a huge, they've got a huge payroll. Obviously, they always do. They made moves again.
Sure.
This would be big.
It would be. All right, that's
and
it.
Sad.
Before we head into
sad.
the weekend.
Big and sad.
Would it be sad?
It would be sad.
I don't think anybody feels bad. I don't even think Yankee fans feel bad for the Yankees. Who feels bad for the Yankees?
How can you say that?
Who feels bad for the Yankees?
How can you say that? Baseball, Yankees go hand in hand.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with
that's almost an un-American statement you just made.
What's ridiculous, you think that they go.
Who did you root for in the Civil War?
In the Civil War? I wasn't alive.
The Yankees.
I didn't root for anybody. I wasn't
And we've been
allowed.
rooting for them ever since.
Yes, I've been not. Yes, I'm glad the Yankees won the Civil War. However, that does not mean I need to root for the New York Yankees in an unfair system known as Major League Baseball.
Unfair, whatever.
It must be. This is the best part, and
Whatever.
I'll put you on blast. And we can talk about this. Is a great topic for tomorrow. You
on
already know
blast.
where this is going.
I do not actually.
We posted the Southern Columbia football story yesterday, and you were. I don't understand how somebody could love the New York Yankees and dislike Southern Columbia football.
No,
those two things make no sense.
No, my statement about Southern Columbia.
We can't dive into it today.
Are we going to dive into it tomorrow?
I promise you, I will give you your fair chance tomorrow.
Okay.
Promise you. That can be a topic for tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Because I would like to even talk about them getting what they got. We have an article on North
because
Central.
they
did something
last night. They have a record.
Regardless of your feelings about like high school football and Southern Columbia, they did something that is
they're on the national stage.
They are on the national stage, and it is something that I think should be commended, regardless with the controversy that comes around them. It's a very unique thing, and it's neat.
Yeah, and it'll be an interesting topic because mine's not so much controversial; it's just philosophical.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. We will be back tomorrow. Thank you to all of our sponsors, and be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. We will be back with one more show tomorrow before the weekend starts. Sound good?
Football tonight, football tomorrow, football Saturday, football Sunday.
Yeah,
it's a good time to be alive.
It is. It is. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
And September baseball is a blast. I know you don't appreciate it, but for those of us who do, September and October are very good sports months. Very good.
There's something about a baseball series that I like significantly more than just like the 3-game, 4-game stand. There's something about having to win so many out of so many that baseball is very great at.
I will say this too: for those who have ever had an opportunity to be at a postseason baseball game, baseball is a lazy for fans. It's lazy. You're just there at the park. It's when you're in every pitch and the fans are in it for every pitch. It is a different environment.
Yes,
it brings that football intensity to a baseball stadium.
Yes.
And it's like a basketball playoff game. During the regular season, a possession 2 minutes into the second quarter is not life or death. In the playoffs, every possession is life or death. And it brings that constant level of attention to detail. And it's fun.
Nice. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
All right. See you guys tomorrow.